This is The Trend, where you'll get an enlightened perspective on trending news and topics with amazing commentary. Welcome back, everybody, if you're listening to the podcast, and welcome to all the new people who are watching this particular video. This is going to be the introduction to a new phase of this channel, and if you guys are not with it, if some of you guys are not with it, perfectly fine. I do understand, because this channel was mostly anime and manga content beforehand, but we're doing a drastically different thing. We're going to be doing daily content, discussing a lot of different topics, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason that I'm going to discuss. But again, I'm fine with you guys that have been here since I started this channel about 2 years ago, that have been used to the anime content, that have been used to the Black Clover content. I'm fine if you guys are unsubscribing, going watching other people. That's perfectly fine. This is a new phase for the channel. There's a new phase for my podcast, new phase for the content that I'm doing here, and that's fine. If you plan to stick around, I do appreciate it. And if you guys adhere to the message that I'm preaching, I appreciate that as well. So the reason why I'm doing this in the first place, the reason why I decided to go to this new direction is very simple. I feel like in terms of the different topics, the controversial topics, just topics in general, to be honest, it's been dwindling in terms of discussions and conversations about these topics, and it seems like the divide between ideologies and thoughts have been growing more and more so. Democratic and Republican, conservative and liberal. Even if you have a differentiating opinion for, like, One Piece is the greatest of all time versus One Piece is trash, it seems like there's two sides, and the conversations between those two sides just do not exist anymore. It becomes overly toxic no matter what side you come on, to the point where you're just not a kind person. What this channel is here to do is provide discussion, conversation, debate. Even if it gets a little heated, as long as it stays civil, that's the purpose of what we're going to be doing here. To have all these discussions in the first place, to learn from the other side and grow as an individual, and that is what I'm here to do. There's one thing that really kind of impacted me in terms of, mindset, right? And it wasn't even anything extreme, by the way. I was watching a YouTube video and an ad popped up. And you know what the ad was? The ad was a movie. Some random movie I didn't know anything about. Matter of fact, this movie's on Apple. I'm not going to watch it, even though I have an Apple product. But the message in the movie stuck out so much so. The movie is about a woman and her grandson. Now, the grandson went to live with his grandmother, and he got kicked out of his former school for bullying, and now he's at this new school with a new life, and kind of feeling bad about what he did, because I don't remember if that kid committed suicide, but I do know that he bullied that kid extensively. Now, in the trailer, it said that the grandmother was going to tell her grandson a story about her life that she didn't want to speak about. And this story was very intriguing, because it was a story about how she was a Jewish girl back in the age of World War II. And she told him the story about what it means to be kind. Something that I feel like does not really exist anymore. Kindness is a forethought, or it's an afterthought that should be something that's cemented in each and every person. No matter what religion you believe in, political ideology you believe in, gender ideology you believe in, anime ideology, sports, it doesn't matter. The kindness that have been a forefront of conversation and understanding has been dwindling. Even people who say they preach understanding and acceptance are some of the most ruthless and most negative people out there, spreading hatred and negativity. And it's on both sides, so no side it deserves any kind of camaraderie for it, because it's there. You can disagree with an ideology, you can disagree with how a person lives their life, but at the very bare minimum, try to understand where they're coming from. And if it's truly something that you want to change, have the conversation. You only can do so much. The more you push people to an edge, the worse things become. the more you disassociate with that person and stick to your own single-minded ideology and way of thinking, the more narrow-minded you become. You start demonizing the other side regardless if they're right or wrong. And that is not kindness. That is hatred. People, it kind of blows my mind. And as I listen to the different viewpoints about all these different topics, one thing is for certain for me. There are very little things that is outright good morally and outright evil morally. Matter of fact, this is truly a spectrum in terms of morality. Good on one side, evil on the other side. Most things that exist in terms of topics out there fall between the edges of good and evil. There are very few things that definitively fall on either side. One evil thing that can't be denied. When it's something that can't be denied, it can't be argued against, then it is outright evil or outright good. For example, racism. Racism has no good qualities. It is the definitive definition of something that would be in the evil section. Rape also would be in the evil section. Something on the good section, love for your family, love for your kids, that would be in the good section. Regardless of what you may think about different topics, no matter how controversial they may be, most of them, 98% of them, fall within this spectrum for each individual person. But people really think that it's just a black and white thing. No, the world is made of gray. Whether you agree with it or not, it is. So it is our due diligence to have the discussions on where it falls on the gray spectrum and how it can benefit more people than it dissuades. I know it's a crazy concept, but it shouldn't be. And that is my problem. Now, in today's episode, we're going to be discussing a lot of different topics and giving my honest opinion about these different topics. Now, in future episodes, I'll have people on and have a civil debate and civil discussion and conversation about these topics. But what I'm going to be here doing on this channel, I'm going to give the facts. I'm going to give my honest opinion about it and kind of specify that this is my opinion. But I'm going to give out facts, not feelings out here. I'm not going to manipulate you like the media does, or try to emotionally dictate where you should be on the spectrum like social media does. Like guilt trip you like social media does. No, what I'm here on the channel to do, I'm here to give you the facts and then give you my honest opinion about them. And I am not going to shy away about topics, because then I'll be being dishonest about what this channel's purpose is. I'll give my honest opinion. If I'm wrong, which is very possible, I don't know everything. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. But one thing that I do better than most people is keep an open mind. Always willing to learn and evolve. I'm not stuck in a certain way, but I do have my beliefs, and those beliefs are going to dictate where I fall in the morality spectrum. So some of the things we're going to be talking about today: Roe versus Wade, of course, that's going to be a huge thing that has been discussed. The Obi Wan series I just recently finished up, so we're going to talk about some entertainment, of course. The Kyrie Irving situation, let's throw some sports in there, of course, because Kyrie Irving has been doing a lot of different things. The Young Thug situation, with what happened with the YSL. And the mass shooting controversies that have been happening this year, it seems like it's been increasing in terms of situations, unfortunately, and the discussion has been happening consistently. So we're going to be discussing all these. The segments will be broken up on the channel. So each segment will have its own individual video on the channel. Don't worry about that. So it's not like an hour, 2 hour long video that you have to watch. If you want to watch it, great. If not, that's perfectly fine. I do hope you guys enjoyed the channel, enjoyed the segment of the podcast, enjoyed the video. This intro was a bit longer to kind of introduce what this YouTube channel will be about moving forward and kind of reiterate what the purpose of the trend is in the first place for the people listening on the podcast. And of course, you can also check out my TikTok channel. I'm planning to rebrand a lot of different things to get here what the trend is. If you guys want to be part of the trend, also let me know, because I plan to turn this into something big. So, we have cover a lot of different topics here. So with that said, let's dive right into the first most controversial thing going on right now, Roe versus Wade. If you guys are not sure about what happened recently, I don't know where you've been. It's all over TikTok. It's all over Twitter. It's all over social media. The decision by the Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Wade. And the idea behind this is that what this is going to implement is the constitutional right to have an abortion across the country is no longer a federal law. So there's a little bit of misconception that people think that overturning this means that abortion is illegal. That is not true. What they're doing is making it a state by state basis. There's a lot of laws out there for states to choose to have for themselves versus the government making it a federal thing. There are tons of laws out there that we don't need to discuss. Like, we have different states that have different gun control laws. Different states have different, weed usage laws. Different states have different, age of consent laws. They have different age of consent for drinking, age of consent for smoking. Like, each states have different laws that they govern by. There's the federal laws and the state laws. What this does is make the act of abortion a state level thing, not a federal thing, which personally, I don't see why that personally is a big deal, because if you want to live in a state where abortion is accessible to you, just live in that state. There's a lot of different things you can do in certain states that you can't do in others. There's a reason why people like to go to different states, like the southern states, if they want to be able to, smoke a little bit, or maybe the age of drinking or be able to use guns is a little bit different. Just live in a place that's more adhering to your ideology. Perfectly fine. Especially considering you can vote in your representative. So it does a few things in terms of it makes the act of voting for like abortion or people who either against or for abortion more impactful in terms of state representatives. So in theory, it will make voting your representative in the state office a lot more impactful for certain individuals. And that will be good, because the more people in politics, the better, because we don't want to vote in the wrong people. The moment voting becomes a afterthought is when things start going downhill. We all know this. So that's important to kind of consider in terms of like voting in for state legislation, of course. And another thing to consider is I feel like a lot of people are saying my body, my choice, which is completely understandable. So for me, obviously I'm not a woman, it would make more sense for the federal government not to be able to dictate what you do with your body. That's going to be left up to the states. They have no say in it anymore, because there's no federal law regarding abortion at all. They're just not involved with that process. So if you want to live in a state where it does do abortion, then you have the opportunity to do so. If you're for abortion, go live in a state that is allowing abortion. If you're against abortion, go live in a state that doesn't allow abortion. That is your choice, because it is your body, of course. In terms of like the inner philosophy and morality behind abortion, I've always been 50-50 with it personally. I'm not religious, so I don't hold the same value in terms of life and the in terms of like fetuses, of course. I do think there's some denial saying that the certain fetuses are not living beings. That's just denying biology at that point. If you just don't have value of life as much as like a Christian does, just say that. You don't need to lie about it. You know what I'm saying? That is what it is. Because there's some like discrepancies you start making, because people start doing, oh, you care about abortion but don't care about gun control, and they try to make two things that compare, but they don't compare at all, and that's when it gets like very messy. It's completely up to you, honestly. I do, especially the situations where it's an accident or where there's a forced situation, and especially if they're really young and just made a mistake. Like, those situations I can understand where, it'll be a viable option, especially considering, for me personally, raising a kid in adoption, like, I have heard more negative things about adoption than positive, in my personal opinion. You can probably prove me wrong if you know more statistics about adoption, but If it's a situation where someone was potentially R-worded, where someone did something very young, just can't take care of the kid, and it just potentially will be bad for the kid. As we know, kids who grow up in a dysfunctional family lifestyle turn out very bad for the most part growing up, with a few exceptions, of course. So that's why I'm always 50-50 with it for the most part. I don't think people should just do it just to do it. I mean, I do think there should be more responsibility for yourself, and I feel like a lot of males and females are probably, I mean, they might be taking it to the extreme. So a lot of females are going like, "Hey, males, get a vasectomy," telling their boyfriend or their husband to get a vasectomy. And like, if that's what you want to do, fine. I don't really care. If you're an adult and you're get a vasectomy, I don't care. It doesn't affect my life. I don't care if you. I don't even care if you get an abortion, to be honest. But it potentially will probably incentivize people to take care of themselves a little bit more in terms of sex, right? Use condoms, use birth control. As long as those stuff don't get hindered by these new laws, I feel like that'll be important, because sometimes kids just go out and try to think that they got a pull-out game and they really don't. Someone gets pregnant and it's GG's. Let me tell you a story for me personally. I'm not going to give out names, but back when I was in middle school, let me tell you, like age like 12 to like 14 to like 12 or 11 or whatever. When I was in middle school, I knew people that were having sex. Matter of fact, I was close to being one of those people, because it seemed like it was a natural thing to have sex in middle school. If you don't know anybody, you're having sex. I knew an 8th grader and a 7th grader that got pregnant. I knew an 8th grader and 7th grader that got pregnant. There was a location where I used to live where people would just have sex constantly. It was called like Dead Man's Cliff, and there would be condoms over there constantly. Middle schoolers. So maybe with this new addition to the law, it would incentivize people to maybe not have sex all the time and being pregnant in middle school, and completely changing the course of your life. Because whether you believe it or whether you agree with it or not, having a kid at a very young age, having a kid period, is a huge life changer. Not saying it's bad, not saying it's good. It changes your life, and that is definitive. So that is my general thoughts about it. I've never been one say, "Oh, you can't have abortion," or "You can't have abortion." Like I said, I think it's situational based for the most part. I do think just having them constantly for just cause just doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't know why you would do that. Just wear protection. It's way easier, right? To be honest. But there's a lot of different factors that'll play into it. Now, another level to it that I feel like people will bring it up, but don't really mean to like make it a big deal. Or what I mean by this is that they're kind of using it as an excuse, but it actually is like important to consider. It's like, how does this play with constitutional rights and cases from the past? Will this set a precedent for other potential cases and laws to be forfeited later on in the future? And I guess that's the question. Some people have argued that because abortion has no inherent connection to the Constitution, that it really has no basis to be a law in the first place. And you may be able to make that argument. I don't know the absolute intricacies in terms of how they compare, but I do know one thing. The moment we do start actually going against things that are actually implemented in the Constitution is when this country will actually start going downhill. I said actually a lot for a reason, because it will be a bad thing. So we'll see what goes on. I don't know about this infringing on women's rights per se, because there are still places you could still have abortion and whatnot. It will be one thing if it was absolutely illegal. If it was outright illegal, that'd be a different story, right? So that's one thing. I'm gonna move on to mass shooting. I'm gonna go like one side to a different side in terms of the political spectrum, because I've been one of those people that said that obviously banning all guns is not a good thing. I've done multiple videos on the channel saying banning all guns in the United States of America is not a good thing, comparing it to other countries and how their gun laws work never really makes sense, because there's a lot of nuance. I broke that down constantly. But I will say that it's not like we shouldn't do anything, right? What won't make sense is that we see this stuff happening, and I've said this to someone before. It doesn't really make sense to change laws for less than 1% of the country or 1% of the country, but it doesn't make sense for us to do nothing. Now that's a completely different story. I do think we definitely should start doing something, because the precedent is being sent out to the public masses. Then one, it's a mental health issue. It is a mental health issue, but it's becoming an excuse for people who do have mental health issues to make themselves famous. Like, they go to a point and they realize, because of media, okay, I hate the school, I hate everybody there, and I know people like me. What they did to like make this expression known is go on a rampage. Like, there's definitely because of how much it's publicized in the media, whether intentionally or not, there is a certain precedent that if you are gone to the edge enough, that people will start doing some crazy stuff, which is true, especially in America. We got a lot of serial killers here, and that's unfortunate, but it now exists. So now we have to do something about that. So finding solutions on what to do about that is definitely something that we need to consider. Now, I am still all game for security being at all schools, for more than one reason. One, of course, is because it'll create more jobs for all the homeless veterans out there, for all the people who went to infantry and have no job afterwards. It'll create some jobs for them, for former cops or former security guards who have no place to work. It'll create jobs for them. So I'm all for creating more jobs for people. I think that's good. And having a security guard, I had a security guard at my high school and I think middle school, and like, they're just there for protection. Like, if someone, not, it's not even one of those things where, oh, someone, God forbid, comes and tries to, shoot up the area, that they'll be able to fight them. It goes beyond that. A security guard can help break up fights. A security guard can help out stop bullying. A security guard can just be an assurance and just another level of protection for students and faculty in the school. I don't see anything wrong with that. It also could provide a different perspective, since the person probably will be from the military or probably be a former cop or something like that, and potentially could even be one of those, partial, not teachers, but kind of teach them lessons on protection, on gun education, on I said protection, but you know what I mean, like self-defense, stuff like that. There are so many benefits for more security at schools. Like, for example, think of this in your head personally. If you were starting a private school, would you or would you not also have security at your private school? Like, you don't have to go on some outlandish road that doesn't make any sense. Just think logically a little bit. Some more security at a school for students, for kids, especially, we know that there's a lot more different things that can happen besides mass shootings in terms of actual consistent daily violence. Why wouldn't you want more security? Let me ask you that. Why? And if your only thing, oh, we don't want more people with the guns at the school, these are security. So those are some of my thoughts in regards to mass shootings, specifically at schools. There's a lot more nuance to it, of course, that, I'm not going to dive into all of it because that's not the purpose. I've talked about it plenty on TikTok, on other podcast episodes, if you guys want to check that out. But I'm not going to talk about it too much. It's just, right now, it seems like it's gonna keep on being an issue, so I just want to give those thoughts. But I do want to pose a hypothetical for people who are listening in, okay? So this hypothetical is for all my anime, superhero, comic book nerds out there. So imagine this, right? Imagine we are in a world where superpowers are a thing. For the most part, everybody has a superpower, and everybody has their own individual superpower for the most part, right? For the most part, so this hypothetical is for all my anime, comic book nerds out there, right? So imagine that we live in a world where, for the most part, everybody has a superpower. Now, superpowers can obviously be very detrimental to normal society, so there's a restriction on the superpowers people can use out in the public. They can't just use their superpower whenever they want, right? There are some restrictions, but at any point where you feel threatened, you have the ability to use your superpower to defend yourself. Now imagine the idea where all superpowers were absolutely and completely banned, meaning you can't even use it to protect yourself anymore. Do you want to live in a society where you can't use your superpower, but there are criminals out there who will break the law and use their superpowers to hurt you? So you're basically defenseless in that situation where there are people who have the same superpower that you have, but they can hurt you because they don't care about the law. It's something to consider at the end of the day, because when it comes down to it, there are so many factors that people just don't consider when it comes to owning a gun. And I'm not even a gun owner, but I realize that these things need to be taken into consideration. We live in a world of peace right now, but most of human history was outright violence. And matter of fact, there is so much darkness and violence and evilness in human society even today, but you guys are shadowed from it. You guys are blinded by it because you live in an age of peace and prosperity, so you can focus on things that are not nearly as relevant to the actual darkness that is going on in today's society. And that's fine. That is a good thing. You want people to be able to not focus on being hungry every day. You want to be focused on, to have people focused on just spending days watching YouTube and entertainment and enjoying their life. You don't want to be focused on the detriment and the darkness that actually is in current society. But people, it is there. And disarming yourselves to help those people, that won't help anybody at the end of the day. Period. And that's just the case. All right, so with that said, we went into the seriousness with the politics of the abortion stuff and the gun stuff. Let's go into a little bit more of a lighter area, because I like to talk about a lot of different things. And one of the things I want to talk about is Obi Wan Kenobi. Also, now that I kind of thought about it again, because I'm watching The Boys right now, and that superhero analogy works perfectly with The Boys, bro. We have people like Homelander out there. You want to be disarmed? Like, come on now, stop it. All right, so I just recently watched Obi Wan Kenobi from the Disney Plus series that's connected to the Star Wars franchise. And one thing I do want to say about Obi Wan Kenobi is he's a GOAT, by the way. Obi Wan is my favorite character in Star Wars. He has always been my favorite character in Star Wars, and for him to get his own TV show was icing on the cake. And I actually really liked Obi-Wan the show. There's a few things that I had issues with in the beginning, primarily Leia just doing whatever she wanted, but after she got over that, it was smooth sailing from there. Darth Vader, Anakin, that entire dynamic between Darth Vader and Anakin, arguably best anime rivalry of all time, to be honest. It's just so amazing. I hope they continue doing this series for the most part. I very much enjoyed it, even though it was only 6 episodes. If I had to rank it, like, we had a few Star Wars shows so far. We had The Mandalorian, we had Boba Fett, we had Obi-Wan, we had the Star Wars kind of like animated short stuff, right? I know we're getting the Ahsoka. I actually never really watched Clone Wars much, but I know a little bit about her. And The Mandalorian 2 is eventually going to come out as well. So it looks like they're jumping like here and there with a lot of different plot lines in the Star Wars franchises. It's kind of weird if you really think about it, because we go from prequel to sequel to the middle of the prequel, and there's a lot of things happening at the same time. What I want for Obi-Wan, though, for sure, is that I actually do want to see Obi-Wan fight against and take on Darth. Like, this should be a whole thing between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan, because we know from the prequel that Obi-Wan lives to his old age, and then him and Darth Vader have their final confrontation in front of Luke Skywalker, and he finally bites the dust. But at that point, he's just an old man, right? So we know that Obi-Wan and Darth Vader had their confrontation time and time again. So it'll be very exciting to see them constantly fight each other over the years. It'll be very exciting to see the, Grand Inquisitor and the other Inquisitors take on Obi-Wan. I'm excited to see what Reva does. Like, is she gonna become Obi-Wan's like Padawan? Because obviously she's not a character. I don't know if she's an original character or from like the comic books or anything. She did an amazing job. She was a really good character for the Obi-Wan series with her dynamic, her going up to try to kill Darth Vader, and then her coming full circle in her path. Now seems like she's gonna become a good guy again, or maybe be the in between of dark side and light side. It'll be so interesting because now Obi-Wan is a Grandmaster Jedi. He's the strongest Jedi currently in the Star Wars universe and his specific timeline. I'm not Darth Vader and Sidious they're not Jedi, so obviously I'm not counting them. But he's like the biggest obstacle for them until Luke comes and eventually defeats Vader. And it's gonna be super exciting to see what happens. Of course, Obi-Wan beating Darth Vader in their 1v1 confrontation made a lot of sense in my personal opinion, because obviously Vader was clouded from his hatred of Obi-Wan, but he had like so much mixed emotions when it came to Obi-Wan at the end of the day, so it's really hard for him to focus. Obi-Wan was very similar, but eventually he calmed himself down and was able to kind of finally accept what happened and best Darth Vader. Him not killing Darth Vader also made a lot of sense, because obviously he still cares about Anakin. He never really wants to kill Anakin because that's like his brother. That's like his closest friend. He grew up with Anakin. It's really hard to kill the person you're closest to. It just is, unless someone kind of pushes you to the edge, right? And Obi-Wan having his like whole thing with Leia is also great, because in the prequels we don't really see Obi-Wan do anything with Leia. It was all Obi-Wan and Luke Skywalker. So it was great to see Obi-Wan and Leia have like a whole like moment together, because we know he taught Luke how to fight, and he raised Luke for a good amount of time, and we knew Leia knew who Obi-Wan was. So to see their relationship was fantastic. The only thing we won't ever see, which is unfortunately because it won't make sense because of the timeline, is like Leia and Darth Vader. Because in the prequel, she barely really did anything with Darth Vader. Like, she never did anything with her father, even though she was that was her father, right? So something behind Leia and Darth Vader would be pretty interesting. I would enjoy it. We'll see. For the most part, Darth Maul potentially coming back would be pretty interesting. Like, Obi-Wan did so many things right for story. It did so many things right for flow. The only ones who can actually fight Obi-Wan was Darth Vader, and he's the only one who did fight him in the series. And yeah, I very much enjoyed it. The combat was also fire. So yeah, Obi-Wan's doing a great job. The Star Wars series is doing a fantastic job. I've enjoyed every single one of the iterations that have come out. So we'll see where it goes from here on out, because I'll be excited. I'll be excited for it. Next, we're gonna be talking about the Kyrie Irving situation, and the Kyrie Irving situation has been kind of messy. Kyrie Irving was at one point like one of my favorite players in the NBA for good reason. His talent is unarguable. He is very skilled. He can do a lot of things on the court. We all know this to be true. Now, the only thing that was really starting to kind of show itself was obviously his injury history. But then it started going downhill fast. Kyrie Irving left LeBron James and the Cavaliers. And it wasn't just like any normal departure. He indicated he won his own team. Apparently, he was kind of a drama queen even for the Cavaliers. He was throwing shots at LeBron, saying, "Finally, I got someone who can help me like shoot in the fourth quarter." Like, it wasn't like a civil departure. No, Kyrie Irving was throwing shots when he left. So he joined the Celtics, tried to make that team good. And then he got injured. That team was still winning without him. He said he's going to stay there for a long period of time. He's going to sign, and then he leaves the next year. It's like, what are you doing, Kyrie, bro? You're just saying stuff but not meaning it for the most part. A lot of differences of opinions in the locker room, and it kind of showed itself. And we saw how good the Celtics were without Kyrie, and it's proven. Then he goes to the Nets. He makes a huge deal out of it, goes to the Nets. Wanted KD to sign there. And even there was drama before that. Kyrie was going like, we don't need a coach. And then they got hired Steve Nash. They said me and him can just be the coach. He thinks he just owns the organization. And then, of course, what happened when they needed him most? He wasn't there. Now, sure, it's injury history was a part of it, which is why he wasn't there for the Bucks series the prior year. But then this year happened, and then he I didn't even mention the fact that he was missing games just cause. Like I remember the time where he missed the game to go to a sister birthday party. Like, okay. And then this year happened. He didn't play because of COVID. He didn't want to get the vaccine. He just said he didn't want to do it. Blah blah blah. Because of that, James Harden eventually left because he didn't think that the team was serious enough. And so there's a little friction there. And then the playoff starts, and then he gets swept in the first round with Kyrie and KD playing. And then he goes like, "Oh yeah, there was like we didn't come together, we didn't have any chemistry." And I'm like, "Well, that's because you weren't playing for half the season, right?" So now we're at a point with Kyrie Irving where it's time for him to sign a contract. He's been there 3 years, by the way. Time for sign a contract. The Nets are not sure to because they don't want to sign him a long-term contract because he hasn't been playing a full season since he's been there. And he's like, "I don't care. Give me my money." And now they're at an impasse right now. And now Kyrie Irving's like, "Okay, I may want to go to this team." He said he had a wish list saying like, "Okay, I want to join the Sixers, Heat, Lakers, Clippers, Mavs." And like most of those teams don't even want Kyrie Irving or have the assets to trade for Kyrie Irving. So now we're at a weird situation where the Nets, if they lose Kyrie Irving, KD might leave because KD is like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's not part of my business." But if you look, this is KD, right? He's like, "Yeah, it's not my business, but if you guys lose him though, I'm leaving too. But it's not my business though." Like, I like KD, but the dude is not a leader, and he never takes accountability for anybody. And he's supposed to be the guy, right? He wanted his own team, but you're not being the guy. When you're the guy, you are acting like the guy. Like, KD doesn't act like the guy at all. So why are you gonna try to make your own team when you're not the guy? Just join someone else's team like you did for the Warriors. Like, you're not the guy. You're just not, because you're not doing anything right now. So it's a very weird situation because I still like KD, even though sometimes he is a little disingenuous with a few things he says. Kyrie Irving's just all over the place, bro. He thinks he can just have it any way he wants. I think he's a good person, but I do think he's a little delusional for a lot of things he says. So the Brooklyn Nets are at a weird situation with Kyrie Irving. What will happen with him? We don't know. Will he sign with the Brooklyn Nets? Will he not? We'll see. If I'm the Brooklyn Nets, like, you're kind of at a weird spot. You kind of have to pay for him because the alternative is losing Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. You traded away all your future assets, all your first round picks for KD, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and you're about to lose all of them. So you kind of have no choice. So that's the Kyrie Irving situation. If I'm any team that's not the Lakers, I would not sign Kyrie. Oh, it's like funny that Kyrie Irving wants to join LeBron again after taking so many shots at him. It's just hilarious. That's how it might work out. And he's about to leave his best friend, quote unquote. So, wow, right? So we'll see what happens with that situation. And we're gonna kind of wrap it up with the Young Thug circumstance that has happened relatively recently. Now, I know this is like a shorter podcast episode. Sorry about that. I'm in the midst of like a huge rebrand, so I've been kind of busy lately. But I recently watched like a whole video about the Young Thug situation and it blew my mind, and it really makes me think about the current state of affairs in terms of in terms of like our culture and the music hip hop industry, right? Because if you don't know, Young Thug has been caught up that he started a gang organization under the guise of YSL, Young Slime Life, and that him and a lot of people have been getting into gang fights and people have been dying, and doing a lot of gang activity, and he basically become like a little gang. Oh, I'm not gonna disrespect, not little, but he became like a gang boss for the YSL. And now with the new laws put in place by like using different ways of evidence to try to kind of crack down on these type of gang situations, he finally caught up Young Thug and his people, and now they're going to jail. So it really makes you think about the current state of affairs in terms of like hip hop, in terms of gang culture, and all the violence and stuff that is going on, but it's not really discussed and referenced. So, what is the solution behind a lot of the things that is happening in our world today? Not sure, but at the very least, we should have a conversation to come to those conclusions and solutions in the first place. Demonizing either group, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, whether you're a fan of anime or hates anime, whether you're a fan of people like Young Thug or you hate Young Thug and hip hop music, at the very least, you should be able to have the conversation discussion to kind of mitigate the differences that do exist in that current atmosphere. Demonizing other people, hating on other people does not breed any type of understanding or common ground or compromise. Something that should be kind of intertwined with people moving forward is kindness. And hopefully on this platform we'll be able to reach that. I will debate any and everybody. I'll have a discussion with any and everybody. I could potentially be wrong, but I like to at least try to be somewhat smart about what I'm talking about. So we'll see moving forward. Hope you guys enjoyed this segment of the podcast. Definitely hope you guys, if you did enjoy, rate it 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And yeah, that's all we got for today. Y'all have a good one. Take care and peace.